newspaper. This is what life is like if you're a visual artist. You can just crumple up some newspaper and it's a piece. So, so this poem is called Crumpled Up. Debris crushed to flowers made summer. You will thought, swam, shard, have this ember. Rendered member of the body whose urge surged, swerve and shine. Ocean opens, shown hours, hours to contrail, pretends to sketch the shape of a flower against infinite information of the sky. Data, mind, eternal eye, information of a day to mind the steeple, war, steep, war, mind, the memoir of shore, a meme war fought on the internet where, however, there are interments fast parsing the rationing shore, endlessness warned between each wounded party marked, intersects, insects, descend to spend the reel their wings beginning that season's gnawing groan of sex. Summer leaves, shirring. You can at these moments open your mouth and imagine that the San Francisco Chronicle, May 15th, 1974, crumpled up, sent forth, first paper to read, then discarded, released, found by Lenka, one of an endless piece of information met for a moment, given to Philip, recited, received, recited, reseeded, recedes, given to Kazim, passed through the city, the situation, and ovation, oration, oblation, ablation, show me what you pray for and eat, save now in this flesh, archive, what ought not be lost, maker of most light, tossed sun, rise up from rodeo beach, leaf, me, bereft, left, all those bunkers in the hills, their doors rusted shut by metal or paper or human touch, whether concrete, metal, paper, or flesh. We mark time on this earth. So I thought I would read you a poem, like a little bit of a different kind of poem. I'm getting a little dark. I can't help it. We're in California and the sun is going down, so I'm receding into shadows. This poem is called Agha Shahid Ali Recites Lorca to the Orderly at St. Vincent's Hospital. And it's a true story of when Agha Shahid Ali was ill with cancer, and he was at St. Vincent's Hospital in New York, which doesn't exist anymore. I think there's a luxury condos there now or something. So this is the poem. So that story is the true, but everything else is my invention. Okay, I made it up. It's a fiction. All right. Agha Shahid Ali recites Lorca to the orderly at St. Vincent's Hospital. It's May, and the long cold spring has begun to loosen its stranglehold, not out of mercy, but because finally it accepts we are hunched down in despair, and inside the hallways of the hospital, the patient stumbles, and Angel appears suddenly to steady him. Angel from Ecuador, he declaims in gratitude, since sound is his most infinite lover now. At night, he could not sleep, so he asked Angel to come to his room and read from his book. Another poet in New York, another dark brother who sang. While he recited from memory, Angel turned pages, following along in Spanish. Those silver threads wove from poet's mouth to orderly's ear, like the looping nostalgique of galaxies, because in the sky there is nobody asleep. As they promenade through the wing, the poet begins reciting the Lorca he knows by heart. Por el East River y el Bronx los muchachos cantaban. And when he can't remember the words, his bird-like savior with coal black hair picks up the line. Tender Angel doesn't mind being held onto, not as orderly, but spouse, because like love, the archers are blind. Turn blue, the color of the sky and Mary's coat, and the blood that races back to his heart while he recites all night long, as on the night of majesty, the angels whispered God's words into the messenger's ears. Angel is transfixed, and neither is sure when he switches from English to Spanish, because in the deep hours, all words are music, and outside the sky turns orange, turns the color of love. 18 years later, there is a snowfall in April, and America drowns itself in machinery and lament. The hospital has been demolished. Like the poet, it is long gone. But in the wind, on the corner of 13th Street and 7th Avenue, the verses of Lorca linger like a secret kiss. And somewhere in this city or country or world, I imagine Angel breathes into another's ears. Cúbreme, cover me with the veil at dawn. So I'd like to just close with one last poem. I moved to California last year. I lived in Ohio for 12 years before that. And I came here to San Diego. And so this is the place in California where the mission where Junipero Serra, the inquisitor, the Spanish inquisitor came. And I wrote this poem when I first moved here because I loved it so much. I felt like I belonged here, but it's very much felt like, as opposed to the Northeast, where it's easier, I guess, to forget that you are a settler and a colonist, and it felt less so here in California for me. And so I was trying to wrestle with what that meant. And I also discovered that the Serras of Mallorca, of which Junipero Serra was one of the sons of that family, they're generally believed to have been crypto-Muslims. And so that struck me as shocking. And that was the moment that started the poem. So this is called Junipero Serra Arrives, and I'll close with this. Thank you for listening, everybody. Now a year like bone on a coast named for the Khalifas. We bring date seeds as tribute to Muslim ghosts, not the ones we harvested, but the ones that haunt our own breath. We bring grass that will spread like Christ. If the spirit will not bend, the body can be made to break. We will stitch new texts into the air and ground in the dawn unfolding. What a chance to sky, what garden left your tongue shall tie. Don't say mountain haunted by bone. Don't say body, don't say home. I too chose to live past the arrival of blades into the bodies of my forebears, directing them like rivers or stone, given such vague directions by God or man. Dear memory of myself, wanting to climb, wanting to know, to be taught what is there. Each time I am reinvented as another human too many times to see the way. Gold and green are not the lights meant to grow here in an Arabia far from home, in a Spain lost to Inquisition, swept away that golden Muslim and Jewish age in wind and sun, all its C words blue and mispronounced from books that did not belong were miswritten. The mosque roofs grow moss. Rain shines down through the late May storm clouds. What a lonely span of ocean I crossed, having renounced my family of questionable faith on that middle island to come here to the valley of the Kumayai, on a shore we will oddly call Khalifa, to obey the dismembered God who in pastures of invasive plants summons me once more to storm heaven. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kazim. That was wonderful. I didn't realize St. Vincent's had closed. St. Vincent.
Yes, it's gone. It's not just closed, it's demolished. It doesn't exist anymore.
I was a patient there in 1987.
He was there in 2001, I believe.
Yeah, I think it closed. I just looked it up. It looks like it closed in 2010.
Yeah.
Anyway, those were beautiful poems. In that line about St. Vincent, in that poem about St. Vincent's, there was a line, America drowns itself in machinery, and what was the rest of it?
Lament.
Lament.
Machinery.
Beautiful. Yeah, I wrote that down and I missed the very last part. Anyway.
The poem is peppered with quotes from Lorca. I probably should have mentioned that.
Oh.
Although I think you could tell the cadence changes in those parts.
Yeah, always a good strategy. Anyway, thank you. Those were beautiful poems. I love hearing you read. So our next reader is Tongo Eisen-Martin, and he's the author of Someone's Dead Already and Heaven is All Goodbyes. Heaven is All Goodbyes is the knockout collection from City Lights Pocket Series that won the 2018 California Book Award. And we're in for a treat because Tongo is known not just for his really, truly wondrous poems, but also for his readings of them, which I don't know if he's going to do it tonight, but they're often done by heart, which always impresses me. And Tongo has played for the World Series that Melissa Stein and I organized as well. We're always thrilled to have him. Happy to listen to him anytime. Anyway, it's your turn to talk, Tongo, and thanks for joining us tonight.
Thank you. I think I won the last one too. I think I got a W.
You won for your team.
Right on. I go to the railroad tracks and follow them to the station of my enemies. A cobalt tooth man pitches pennies at my mugshot negative. All over the United States, there are toddlers in the rock. I see why everyone out here got in the big cosmic basket and why blood agreements mean a lot and why I get shot back at. I understand the psycho-spiritual refusal to write white history or take the glass freeway. White skin tattoo on my right forearm, ricochet sewage near where I collapse into a rat-infested manhood. My new existence is living graffiti. In the kitchen with a lot of gun cylinders to hack up. House of God in part, no cops in part. My body brings down the Christmas. The new bullets pray over the blankets made from old bullets. Pray over the 28th hour's next beauty mark, extrajudicial Confederate statue restoration, the waistband before the next protest poster. By the way, time is not an illusion, Your Honor. I will save your deaths for last. You are witty, Your Honor. You're moving money again, Your Honor. It's only raining one thing, non-white cops and prison guard shadows reminding me of spoiled milk floating on an oil spill. A neighborhood making a lot of fuss over its demise, a new lake for a Black Panther party. Malcolm X's ballroom jacket slung over my son's shoulder, the figment of village, a new news to a new white preacher, all in an abstract painting of a president, bought slavers some time, didn't it? The tantric screeches of military boats and election Tuesday cars, a cold-blooded study in leg irons inside a tornado shelter, leg irons inside of your body, proof that some white people have actually fondled nooses, that sundown couples made their vows of love over opaque peach plastic and bolt action audiences. The Medgar Evers second is definitely my favorite law of science. Fondled news clippings and primitive Methodists, my arm changes imperialisms. Simple policing versus structural frenzies. Elementary school script versus even wider white spectrums. Artless bleeding and the challenge of watching civilians think. Terrible rituals they have around the corner. They let their elders beg for public mercy. I'm gonna go ahead and sharpen these kids' heads into arrows myself and see how much gravy spills out of family crest. Modern fans of war with their t-shirt poems and t-shirt guilt. And me having on the cheapest pair of shoes on the bus, I have no choice but to read the city walls for signs of my life. First, I should have apologized to the souls of the house. I'm wearing the cheekbones of the mask only. Pill bottle, my name is yours, name tagged on the side of a factory of wrists. Teeth of the mask now. Back of the head of the mask now. A new phase of anti-anthropomorphism fitting for real faces. Stuck with one of those cultures that believes I chose this family. I am not creative, just the silliest of the revolutionaries. My blood drying on my only jacket, the police state psychic middlemen evangelizing for the creation of an unmasses, an unmedgar, blood of a lamb less racialized or awesome prison sentence, good God. Elder abuse hired for the law. Dog-eat genius while a right angle is made between a point on a Louisiana plantation and a 5-year-old's rubber ball, 3 feet high and falling like a deportee plane to complete my interpretation of garden variety genocide. I am small talk about loving your enemies a little more realistically, about paper tigers and also gold. I need my left hand back. Broke my neck on a piano key, found paradise in a fist fight. Maybe I should check into the Cuba line. Watching the universe's last metronome, some call Black Jacobins. They just wait. These religions will start resigning in a decade or two. Some colorfully, some transactionally. In a cotton Gothic society, class betrayal gone glassless. Ironically, my window started fogging over too as I was trying to figure out which Haiti would get me through the winter, which poem houses souls, which socialist breakthroughs. Breakthroughs like taking 10 steps back, then finally stillness. Stillness, then stillness among families. A John Brown biography would take a bow. I'd be up next to introduce Prosser the month. I remember childhood. Remember the word childhood being a beginning. Scribbling on an amazing grace, I rented this body from some circumference of slavery. Remember being kicked out the Midwest. Strange fruit theater, lithium and circuses, like-minded stomachs, the ruling class blessing their blank checks with levy phone, with opioid tea, sentient dollar bills yelling to each other pocket to pocket. Cello stands in the precinct for accompanying counter-revolutionaries. My mother raised me with a simple pain. A poet loses his mind, like the room has weather, or first girlfriend gravity. Difference between me and you is the madness wants me forever. A pair of apartments defining both my family and political composure. Books behind my back, bail money paved into the streets playing euphoria cliche. Bracing for the medicine's recoil, sharing a dirty deli sandwich with my friends. Black Jacobins, underground topography on my grandmother's hands. Psychology of the mask now. Teeth of the mask again. Apparently too much of San Francisco was not there in the first place. This dream requires more condemned Africans, or put another way, state violence rises down, or still life is just getting warmed up, or Army life is looking for a new church and ignored all other suggestions, or folktale writers have not made up their minds as to who is going to be their friends. This is the worst downtown yet, and I have borrowed a cigarette everywhere. I've taken many a walk to the back of a bus that led on out the back of a storyteller's prison sentence, then on out the back of slave scars, but this is my comeback phase. I left my watch on the public bathroom sink and took the toilet with me. Threw it at the first bus I saw eating single mothers half alive. It flew through the bus line number, then on out the front of the White House. Hopefully you find comfort downtown, but if not, we brought you enough cigarette filters to make a decent winter coat. A special species of handshake lets all know who's king and what's the lifespan of uniform. This coffee needs to quit acting like those are birds singing. Rusty nails have no wings, have no voice other than that of a white world dying. Their book pages in the gas pump. Catchy, isn't it? The way 3 nooses is the rule, or the way potato sack masks go so well with radio codes, or the way condemned Africans fought their way back to the ocean only to find waves made of 1920s burnt up piano parts, European backdoor deals, and red flowers for widows who spend all day in the sun mumbling in San Francisco. Red flowers, but what's the color of a doctor visit? There are book titles in the streets. Book titles like Hero, You Make a Better Zero, or Hey, fur coat lady, the president is dead, or Pay Me Back in Children, or They Hung Up Their Bodies in Their Own Museums, and other book titles pulled from a drum solo. Run here, hero, lie at the hiding place. All the bullets in 10 precincts know where to go. There's no heaven nor any other good idea in the sky. Politics means that people did it and people do it. Understand that when in San Francisco and other places that were never really there, I bet this ocean thinks it's an ocean, but it's not. It's just 60 Mission Street. All know who's king, king of thin things. Like America, I am proud to deserve to die. I'm going to eat my dinner extra slow tonight in this police state candy dispenser you all call a neighborhood. No set of manners goes unpunished. Never mind a murderer's insomnia or the tea kettle preparing everyone for police sirens. Did you know that capitalists eat until the world is blurry to them? These streets are made of saliva. There are some people made of saliva too. They usually have on uniforms. While a crazy man spins round and round trying to make a record out of this mass production jungle, maybe I'll join him. Count cash and cry. These streets are made of saliva, and white sheets are worn by a building in which kids are supposed to learn how to read well. You know, white sheets on the highway too. Another mirror needs to head on the pike. One down is just one down. But if you tell all this to the masses, your teacher will pipeline you. They told me I was jewelry, and they told me this is jungle. Well, maybe not jungle, more like 50 machine guns planted in the ground. It's raining faces again in California. What does it say about heaven? What does it say about the people you killed? Waiting lines got so exhausted, a million minds dropped all these faces at once. If the fascists can read the lips of a giant talking in his sleep, we might as well make our demands in prison letters. Today was born the most important trigger finger in the world. Today I begun counting down the pages between now and a pile of books by a tunnel. Chicago is going to walk out of Chicago one day. Babies will drag street signs like old toys. Today, the most important letter left prison. Babies will laugh at flags like faces that have disappeared. Maybe I'll join them, but for now, these streets are made of saliva, and we raise half-full glasses to the basements that meant nothing, and the working poor who live there. We get shot. We get white sheets on California, where the kitchen table likes to talk as much as the walls, and romance on the porch consists of harborizing. I mean, in this picture, characters talk spit and know that they are hard to kill. The kitchen table knows this. The porch is almost convinced that one down is just one down. This town is coming to town. A circus watching itself, half distracted, half suicidal, thrilled children dressed as cops, thrilled children preaching and policing, intaking and hiring and snatching your money. This town's coming to town with tough trademarks to follow. Today, I watch capitalism walk on water and people play dead so that they could be part of a miracle. In conclusion, I talk facing away from the dead. They replace me with the change in my pocket, a penny that's yet to be invented. You know, they say you have to know how to cut a throat on the way to cutting a throat. After sleeping on a mattress made from 2 garbage bags of clothes, I became content with the small gestures of plantation fires. Playing with couch ashes, I realized how weird the universe was. It exists in so many places, so many random things. It interrupts me while I'm trying to dream. Like your clay correspondence, Lord. To be transparent, I have 20 books next to a bullet, like an old man giving advice at the beginning of a revolution. I've really done it, Lord. Explored the mumbles of my mind. Explored what's naturally there, and I found no brainwashing. I found Africa, Lord. I have a future. It takes place in the diasporic South. I have morning possessions, modern militancy. I mean, windows to the South. I will walk on a missile for food. I guess you will not want flowers for a few years, Lord. Will I be tied face to face with the country I murder? Merge with us, Lord. Our old metal versus a new metal. Our old metal versus a pool of meandering imperialist faces. A multiculturalism of sorts. The dead replaced me with a comedian's chest cavity instead of a chest cavity held tight. It takes a violent middleman for me to talk to myself. Stories that travel through other people's stories. A song about a song. A hemisphere about a hemisphere. Stories that travel through a conquered poet. My mother remembers Africa, Lord. She killed on behalf of you. I wore a machete all winter and no one asked me what it meant. I read 1,000 books in front of the world. You know, what I do is fight poems and sleep through decadent San Francisco prayer circles, watch people play for post-working class associative surfaces or recreations of a governor's desk, ruling class art of utility, playing find the sociopathic bureaucrat, a day that some white people scare even easier. TV in a basket next to a ceramic baby wearing ceramic armor, musket progeny, fantasizing through the art of the poor, their trendy latches, locked before God, black art, hunted down like a dog. Hand over my friends, Lord. Lord, I think I'm gonna die in the war. Unelected white people in my small house, like a blues song of no spiritual effect, or dollhouse H-bomb, a pony show near dead bodies, apartheid weddings that go right, apartheid white people who give birth to mathematicians, the spiritual continuity of barracks and police stations, a chemical interpretation of a Sunday trip to church, church smells in their pockets, a river mistaken for a talking river, no autobiography outside of small personal victories of violence and drug use, made in the image of God's trinkets, what white abolitionists confided in their children about, chemical assurances that they will switch from black artists to white artists, black God to white God, black worker to white worker. I think about you cautiously, Lord. In the same way I think about my childhood, Lord. Foxhole Friday nights, most of life is mute. A comedian points out a planter's field to a priest. King Sugarcane, King Cotton, King Revolutionary, the Boundless Central, containing all modes of shallow introduction, introducing an unlisted planter class speaking about fevers and balance sheets and reassuring the masses that we can figure out our fathers later. A priest took my mother lightly, Lord. Stood in front of parishioners, re-raveling fantasies about black art. Priest reading confidently before I broke him and broke his parallel. After today, I've never been a poet before. A little brother watches his big brother's friends. They lean rifles on sheltered walls. They agree with me and call it literature. It's a simple matter, this revolution thing. To really lie to no one, to keep nothing godlike, to write a poem for God. Thank you.
Wonderful. Wow. That was wonderful. Hey, Tongo, did you bring your books? Could you hold it? Do you have a book to hold up?
Yes, I do. So we got Someone's Dead Already, and this is Heaven Is All Goodbye.
Yeah, so you guys can, viewers can order those books, all the books from all the poets at bookshop.org. And it's super easy. I did it like an hour before this thing aired. I just got on and ordered everyone's books. Very easy. I'm assuming they'll arrive. But anyway, I encourage everyone to do that. Thank you, Tongo. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Wonderful. I just am blown away by your ability to have that amount of material by heart and just be able to say it. You know, that's what Frost said we're supposed to do with poems, is just say them and not recite them. Anyway, we are down to our last reader now, the wonderful, beloved Jane Hirshfield. And let me just get to my, oh, here we go. Jane, do you have your new book to show us, Ledger?
Oh, I have to speak to, can you see it? No, it's quite transparent. Yes, I published a transparent and invisible book.
It's in invisible ink. It looks like a magic trick. Okay, well, it's a gorgeous cover and a wonderful book. Jane Hirshfield's ninth collection, Ledger, just released, was it like about 2 weeks ago? Very recent.
March 10th.
Yeah, very, very recent. Chancellor Emerita of the Academy of American Poets and recently elected into the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, Jane works frequently at the intersection of poetry and science. And her poem, Let Them Not Say, became a rallying cry after the 2016 election. It was in the Washington Post. It was read everywhere. I read it about 1,000 times to people anytime I could. It's in a ton of anthologies, and that's in the new book. Jane's essays, poems, and translations, well, she has several books of essays. They're wonderful. And her essays, poems, and translations appear in the New Yorker, the Atlantic, Poetry, and pretty much everywhere. We're thrilled to have you, Jane. Thanks so much for joining us, and it's your turn to read.
Well, thank you very much, Becky. Thank you, Litquake. Thank you, Tongo and Kazim. This This is a bit of a surprise for me. I was supposed to be on a lot of airplanes in a lot of cities right now. And instead, here I am doing my first Zoom literary event. So I thought I would begin with a poem from the book called I Wanted to Be Surprised. I wanted to be surprised. To such a request, the world is obliging. In just the past week, a rotund porcupine who seemed equally startled by me. The man who swallowed a tiny microphone to record the sounds of his body, not considering beforehand how he might remove it. A cabbage and mustard sandwich on marbled bread. How easily the large spiders were caught with a clear plastic cup surprised even them. I don't know why I was surprised every time love started or ended, or why each time a new fossil, Earth-like planet, or war, or that no one kept being there when the doorknob had clearly. What should not have been so surprising, my error after error, recognized when appearing on the faces of others. What did not surprise enough, my daily expectation that anything would continue, and then that so much did continue when so much did not. Small rivulets still flowing downhill when it wasn't raining, a sister's birthday. Also, the stubborn, courteous persistence that even today, please means please. Good morning is still understood as good morning. And that when I wake up, the window's distant mountain remains a mountain. The burrowed city around me is still a city and standing. Its alleys and markets, offices of dentists, drugstore, liquor store, Chevron. Its library that charges a happy surprise, no fine for overdue books. Borges, Baldwin, Zimborska, Morrison, Cavafy. Now I will read the poem that Becky mentioned. It opens the book, Let Them Not Say. And this book is deeply centered on the crises of the biosphere, of climate change, of environmental unraveling, and the utter disrespect that the powers of this world have been bringing to this world that supports us all. And I have found, as this new crisis has arisen, that a lot of the poems take on a second meaning and a different meaning, which is part of what poems always do. They're written into one era, period, set of circumstances, and suddenly they find themselves speaking inside another. Let them not say. Let them not say, we did not see it, we saw. Let them not say, we did not hear it, we heard. Let them not say, they did not taste it, we ate, we trembled. Let them not say, it was not spoken, not written. We spoke. We witnessed with voices and hands. Let them not say, they did nothing. We did not enough. Let them say, as they must say something, a kerosene beauty, it burned. Let them say, we warmed ourselves by it, read by its light, praised, and it burned. The bowl of this next poem's title could be any bowl in your kitchen. It could also be thought of as the bowl carried by Buddhist monks during the practice of taking your empty bowl from house to house in the community. And if the community gives you something to eat, you have dinner. And if the community does not, You don't have dinner. The bowl. If meat is put into the bowl, meat is eaten. If rice is put into the bowl, it may be cooked. If a shoe is put into the bowl, the leather is chewed and chewed over, a sentence that cannot be taken in or forgotten. A day, if a day could feel, must feel like a bowl. Wars, loves, trucks, betrayals, kindness, it eats them. Then the next day comes, spotless and hungry. The bowl cannot be thrown away. It cannot be broken. It is calm, uneclipsable, rindless. And big though it seems, fits exactly in 2 human hands. Hands with 10 fingers, 54 bones, capacities strange to us, almost past measure, scented as the curve of the bowl is, with cardamom, star anise, long pepper, cinnamon, hyssop. This next poem was written when I was working in Florida on the former painting estate and studio of Robert Rauschenberg. It was the rainiest 2 months in Florida's history. And during the time that I was there, they had to release the water from Florida's Central Lake so it wouldn't completely breach its containment. And for the next 2 weeks, dead fish were washing up on the shore. The island is also only 5 feet above sea level at its highest, and we were waiting between our workrooms and where we slept and where we ate. I was calf deep in the reality that climate change isn't the future. The poem covers a lot of ground. One morning, several of us woke up early to see the International Space Station going over. It talks about geology and evolution, land formation in Florida, terrorism, the civil war in Syria, and it ends with the refugee crisis in the Mediterranean, which, even though I wrote this poem several years ago now, just continues. Day beginning with seeing the International Space Station and a full moon over the Gulf of Mexico and all its invisible fishes. None of this had to happen. Not Florida, not the ibis's beak, not water, not the horseshoe crab's empty body, and not the living starfish. Evolution might have turned left at the corner and gone down another street entirely. The asteroid might have missed. The seams of limestone need not have been susceptible to sand and mangroves. The radio might have found a different music. The hips of one man and the hips of another might have stood beside each other on a bus in Aleppo and recognized themselves as long-lost brothers. The key could have broken off in the lock, and the nail can refused its lid. I might have been the fish the brown pelican swallowed. You might have been the way the moon kept not setting, long after we thought it would, long after the sun was catching inside the low wave curls coming in at a certain angle. The light might not have been eaten again by its moving. If the unbearable were not weightless, we might yet buckle under the grief of what hasn't changed yet. Across the world, a man pulls a woman from the water from which the leapt from overfilled boat has entirely vanished. From the water pulls one child, another. Both are living, and both will continue to live. This did not have to happen. No part of this had to happen. Like others. In the end, I was like others, a person, sometimes embarrassed, sometimes afraid. When fire was shouted, some ran toward it, some away. I neck deep among them. So along with the crisis of climate change and the environment, this book also has a fair number of poems looking at the crisis of unabated violence. I'll read you this short poem. Words. Words are loyal. Whatever they name, they take the side of. As the word courage will afterward grip just as well the frightened girl soldier who stands on one side of barbed wire, the frightened boy soldier who stands on the other. Death's clay. They look at each other with wide open eyes. And words that love peace, love gossip, refuse to condemn them. Practice. I touch my toes. When I was a child, this was difficult. Now I touch my toes daily. In 2012, in Sanford, Florida, someone nearby was touching her toes before bed. 3 weeks ago in the Philippines or Myanmar, someone was stretching. Tomorrow, someone elsewhere will bend first to one side, then the other. I also do 10 push-ups, morning and evening, women's push-ups from the knees. They resemble certain forms of religious bowing. In place of 1, 2, 4, 7, I count the names of incomprehension: Sanford, Ferguson, Charleston, Aleppo, Sarajevo, Nagasaki. I never reach Troy, I have done this for years now. Bystander, listener, one of the lucky. I do not seem to grow stronger. So I have time for maybe 2 more. I forgot to write down the page. There we have it. So I love that poems are sometimes fact-checked, and a science journal fact-checked this and said, I've never known that to happen to a tree, but it did happen. I saw it. And quite oddly, although it's got nothing to do with what's in the poem, this happened moments before the full solar eclipse a couple of years ago. No wind, no rain. No wind, no rain. The tree just fell as a piece of fruit does. But no, not fruit, not ripe, not fell. It broke. It shattered. One cone's addition of resinous cell sap, one small-bodied bird arriving to tap for a beetle. It shattered. What word, what act was it we thought did not matter? I will close with the last poem in the book. It was written after an earlier poem in the book, which was the darkest thing I have ever imagined or said. And I felt, after I sent it to a friend who asked to see it, when I described it that way to her, I suddenly felt aghast at myself for writing something so very dark. And I felt a surge of remorse and a surge of guilt and a sense that it is actually simply rude to see only darkness in our future and not to see all of the beauty that remains around us at every moment and is still here and is still going on. And so I wrote this. My debt. Like all who believe in the senses, I was an accountant, copyist, statistician, not registrar, witness, permitted to touch the leaf of a thistle, the trembling work of a spider, to ponder the Hubble's recordings. It did not matter if I believed in the party of particle or of wave, as I carried no weapon. It did not matter if I believed. I weighed ashes, actions, cities that glittered like rubies on the scales I was given, calibrated in units of fear and amazement. I wrote the word it, the word is. I entered the debt that is owed to the real. Forgive, spine-covered leaf, soft-bodied spider, octopus lifting one curious tentacle back toward the hand of the diver, that in such black ink I set down your flammable colors. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jane. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I just want to let our readers know that we have a howl happening here in Marin every day, every evening at 8 o'clock. So if you, in about 3 minutes, if you start hearing a lot of howling, it sounds like coyotes in the background. And I might even walk out on the deck briefly and see if my microphone can pick it up, because it's pretty cool. At least where I am, the voices bounce back off the canyons and they form these dissonant chords that are really beautiful and eerie. And sometimes the coyotes join in. Have you heard that, Jane?
I have heard the wild turkeys also join in. So the first time that I heard the howl, I had not heard about the howl, and it actually terrified me.
Yeah.
Because out of the corner of an ear, I suddenly heard this wail going up all around me, and the thought crossed my mind. Having seen too many movies, I thought, you know, have the dead risen from their graves? What is that? But then once I knew what it was, and I've gone out and joined it, I understand much better. You know, I practice my yip and my hoot and my howl, and you talk to a particular neighbor, and it's a way of connecting to those you know and those you don't know, which is kind of unusual. Other cities, they clap and they sing. Here we howl.
Yeah, I really like it. And I think kids are having a lot of fun with it too.
Oh,
People
yeah.
are saying, you know, I was frightened the first time I heard it too. And people are saying that the coyotes are getting bolder now that there's not so much traffic, and they're seeing them more in places they haven't seen them before and different times of day. So I'm thinking the coyotes are thinking, it's my time now. It's my world. Anyway, we do have a few questions that came in while you guys were reading. So I'm gonna ask a few questions, and maybe to keep things orderly, you can answer in the order that you read. So Kazim, Tongo, Jane, each of you can take a crack at it if you want. So here's a question that just came in, and I was gonna ask this anyway, so I'm happy to see this. How has your creative process been affected by COVID and the current state of affairs? Are you writing? Do you have any suggestions for writers like me that are pretty stalled and so busy bleaching the countertops that there doesn't seem to be time to write a poem? So how has your creative process been affected? Oh my God, the howls are starting. Anyways, go ahead.
Well, I will say that I have a book coming out in November that is a nonfiction book, a research-based book about hydroelectricity in northern Manitoba, which is where I grew up. My father was a hydroelectric engineer. He's retired, but that was his career. And so I grew up during the building of this dam in northern Manitoba. So I've actually been working a lot on revisions of that. So I think one way of staying creative is to go back to old things that maybe you've been abandoned or maybe have worked on in the past but have put aside or are still working on. Writing and revising definitely use different parts of the brain, and I think that one can get that sense of writer's block in the writing of new material, but there's always something else to work on in the old notebook. So that's the first thing I would say. The second thing for me actually is that I have turned to a practice of the body. I practice yoga and I teach yoga, and a long time ago I used to dance, and I haven't done that very much lately. But when I started to stay in my house and stay in the same place, I began creating dances again. So I actually invented a YouTube channel. If you go to my Twitter, Kazim Ali Poet, you can find my YouTube channel easily. And I've been posting dance pieces, and I've also been reading other poets' poems and putting up videos of those recitations. And then quite randomly, I started doing little videos of reading Paradise Lost, which is magnificent poem. So I think there's lots of different ways of staying creative that don't necessarily all involve writing one's own poems, although I've been trying to do that as well. It's been, maybe obviously challenging, but those are the three things that I can suggest to everybody.
Well, those are wonderful ideas, and I've seen a couple of those dance videos. They're great.
Yeah.
And I also clicked on you reading Tennessee June, that Jory Graham poem.
Yeah,
I'm going to use that for something. I'm going to talk to you about that later after this is over. But yeah, what a great idea to do body work and to be creative in other ways instead of just fretting over the writing not coming. Thank you.
Yeah.
Tongo, what are you doing? How has your creative process changed or not?
I'm sorry. Actually, I've been thrown off a little bit because out of morbid curiosity, I looked at some of these questions, and I've basically been called an N-word.
Yeah, I didn't think you could
About
see it.
500 times.
Yeah,
And,
I wasn't going to call it. I wasn't going to give them any lip service. It's ridiculous.
Well, this is where, and Brother Kazim, you didn't make it out of this unscathed.
Neither did I. We all got ringed.
I noticed that, but I really don't.
I
haven't looked. I didn't.
Oh, don't bother. It's fine.
Okay. I'll come up with a response later. I don't want to give him any airtime at all.
Right. Well, I digress. One thing I found is that you can't really like outsmart this this almost this almost psychic situation. So that I've turned to like a lot of meditation and making sure I'm reading kind of these spiritual texts and ground myself in this kind of like really 20 minutes at a time type of attempt at discipline. Because when I try to just, I have all these other groovy books I've been wanting to digest and these poems I've been wanting to write and whatever other little plots and plans, I can still spiral out of that. So just kind of grounding in a spiritual practice is really what's kept me myself.
Jane?
So I am always an intermittent writer. I don't have a daily practice of always having my pen moving over paper. I do have a daily practice of trying, as each of us has said, and you would say if you were answering the question yourself, Becky, of every day trying to, in some way, take off the outer dozen layers of skin, be open, be awake, be vulnerable to what this moment is bringing, and to our abiding connection with every other human being. I mean, you feel the suffering of the earth so strongly. All you have to do is look at the newspaper or go online and look at the news, and there is just such a clear vision of what happens when we don't take care of one another for reasons of greed or distance or disbelief or wishful thinking. And it is our job, I think, as artists to be open to seeing that, to feeling it, to taking it in, and to somehow transforming it through some alchemical process so that the suffering which enters our lives is not dismissed, but is returned to the world, changed with the knowledge and an awareness of our connection, our depth, our vulnerability, our deepest selves. So the one thing that I did which surprised me was the very first morning of shelter in place, when the world suddenly got very quiet here. For a few hours, I felt that openness. And I wrote a poem directly into it, which I don't have with me, so I can't read it to you, called Today When I Could Do Nothing, or Today When I Can Do Nothing. And I wrote the poem to take in for myself what was going on. And a few hours later, I got an email from the arts and culture editor of the San Francisco Chronicle saying, you know, do you have anything we could run? And could you write something for us? And I said, well, no, I can't do commissions at all, but I wrote something this morning. Would you like to see it? And a few days later, he put it up online, and a few days later, it was in the newspaper, and it has just traveled everywhere. I've heard, you know, it's gotten around. And what it talks about, which is actually what happened, was I was sitting there quietly on my windowsill, and I noticed an ant crawled across my computer, crawled onto the back of the window seat, and I took it outside. And that was the only thing I felt like I could do. You know, one of the qualities of this moment for many of us, you're able to make masks. I can't sew. I don't have a sewing machine. I felt, you know, what could I do? Well, we can stay home and stop the transmission. We can all do that. But what I could do was take that ant and put it back outside, because I'd carried it in on the morning paper, obviously. And that's what I did, and it turned into a poem, and then the poem seems to be helping other people. And I feel quite connected to people when such a private, interior, tiny act suddenly becomes something that other people are interested in. And that's what our work is. That's what we do. Artists do that.
Well, I love that poem. In fact, I'm featuring it in the weekly column I write for Women's Voices for Change this Sunday. And I brought it up on my phone. If there's time, I'm going to read it. I think we're getting close to the end of the program, and unless there are any other burning questions, let me just see the ones that just came in by text. Yeah, I think what I'd like to do now is I'd like to read a poem and ask each of you, do each of you have another poem to read that in some way speaks to what we're going through right now?
You mean the poems by other people that you asked us to?
Or it could be one of your poems too, but just something to leave in the air. And again, we'll go in the, I'll read first, and then we'll go in the order that everybody read in. I'm going to read Nuns Fret Not by Wordsworth, one of my favorite sonnets. And it's called Nuns Fret Not at Their Convent's Narrow Room. And he's talking about the form of the sonnet. and why he in particular does not find that form binding or constraining. It's the idea of freedom in chains, the idea that in the limitations imposed by form, you can discover tremendous freedom. It's like that idea that between the particles of an atom, there's infinite space. So nuns fret not. Nuns fret not at their convent's narrow room, and hermits are contented with their cells, and students with their pensive citadels. Maids at the wheel, the weaver at his loom, sit blithe and happy. Bees that soar for bloom, high as the highest peak of furnace fells, will murmur by the hour in foxglove bells. In truth, the prison into which we doom ourselves, no prison is, and hence for me, in sundry moods, 'twas pastime to be bound within this sonnet's scanty plot of ground. Pleased if some souls, for such their needs must be, who have felt the weight of too much liberty, should find brief solace there, as I have found. Kazim, do you have a poem for us?
I do. I just want to say that in particular, these moments of shelter in place and quarantine and scarceness and unsurety and maybe even fear about other people and what could happen based on a casual interaction. I mean, these are all things that we are living through now and have developed a kind of compassion for our condition. But this is a condition that many people in the world live in different ways all the time. I just read today in the newspaper about the 9th. There were 7 coronavirus positive in Gaza Strip. There's 9 now, and this is like a place that's under permanent quarantine. There is a factory in Gaza that's making medical masks, 20,000 medical masks a day, but 100% of them are being sent to Israel. They can't sell them to anyone else. They're not allowed to. So this is like, we've developed a kind of awareness around a lot of our own condition. People are talking about like, this is why we should have, universal health care. And I think that if you are a person who believes like now we're in a state of emergency and so people should have guaranteed care, people have been living under a state of emergency for a long time. And so the rest of us who are in the comfortable, I work for the University of California, I have health insurance, it's been great, and now we're saying like, well, we should all have it because of this pandemic, but maybe we really need to maybe this moment, this tragic, terrible moment is a way of thinking about, well, how is it that we really do want to live as a country? How is it that we care for each other? So I want to read a poem. I want to read an excerpt of a longer poem by Lucille Clifton. And this is a poem that she published. She wrote it very, very early in her career, but she didn't publish it until 2004. And it's called, the long poem is called The Message from the Ones. And she always claimed, she said that she didn't write it. It was a channeling experience. She channeled this poem. So I'm just going to read a small section of it, three small little bits of it. So this is from The Message of the Ones by Lucille Clifton. The air you have polluted, you will breathe. The waters you have poisoned, you will drink. When you come again, and you will come again, the air you have polluted, you will breathe. The waters you have poisoned, you will drink. The patience of the universe is not without an end. So might it slowly turn its back. So might it slowly walk away, leaving you alone in the world you leave your children. What has been made can be unmade. Saints have begun to enter, wearing breasts, hoping for children, nursed toward wholeness, holiness. It is perhaps a final chance, not the end of the world, of a world.
Beautiful.
That's Lucille Clifton.
Beautiful.
Um,
Tongo, do you have a poem?
yes, from Diane DePrima, Revolutionary Letter number 53, San Francisco Note. I think I'll stay on this earthquake fault near this still active volcano in this armed fortress facing a dying ocean and covered with dirt, while the streets burn up and the rocks fly and pepper gas lays us out, because that's where my friends are, you bastards. Not that you know what that means. Ain't gonna cop to it. Ain't gonna be scared no more. We all know the same songs, mushrooms, butterflies. We all have the same babies. Dig it, the woods are big.
Jane?
Yeah, so I had a lot of trouble. I'm never very good at picking just one thing. So I'm going to tell you 3 poems I'm not reading you. I'm not reading you Yeats's Lake Isle of Innisfree, which is a poem about wanting to go off into a state of solitude. I'm not reading you Elizabeth Bishop's One Art, a poem about the art of losing and not being hard to master. I'm not reading you James Baldwin's magnificent Untitled, a poem about asking the Lord to go a little lightly on us. And I am going to read you 2 very short ones. The first one is a haiku by the Japanese poet Issa. We walk on the roof of hell, gathering blossoms. We walk on the roof of hell, gathering blossoms. And the other one I'm going to read you is by the Polish poet Wisława Szymborska, her famous poem about a painting that most people will recognize, Vermeer. So long as that woman from the Rijksmuseum in painted quiet and concentration keeps pouring milk day after day from the pitcher to the bowl, the world hasn't earned the world's end.
Beautiful. Well, I hope we gathered some blossoms tonight with this reading. And I want to thank all of you for sharing your work with us and giving us something to hang on to in these difficult times. Thanks again to Litquake for presenting this platform and helping us figure out how to use it. I want to remind viewers that they can visit bookshop.org to buy books by any of the poets that read today. This is a tough time for the arts everywhere, and Litquake is doing really important work for us. So if you'd like to help support Litquake and future readings like this, you can go to their website or through Venmo at Litquake and make a donation. And we'd really appreciate it if you consider that. Tonight's reading was recorded, and we're going to prepare a podcast which will be posted on the Litquake website. They have a section called Litcast, so it'll probably take a day or 2 to get it together, but you will be able to find it there if you'd like to go back and listen to these poems again. I forgot to say what I've been doing to stay sane during this time, and it's mostly been knitting. And I'm knitting these hats that say poetry on them, see? Anyway, thanks everybody. I had a great time. Thank you to all the readers who tuned in. I hope we get to do this again. Everybody stay safe, be kind to each other. It all comes back to us, so let's be our best selves in this time. And signing off. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night. Good night.
Night.
Good night, everybody.